Hey guys, welcome back to the Nonprofit Missionary Podcast. We are here to help you to become true missionaries to your community by establishing faith-based
Hey,
nonprofits,
What's going on?
by securing funding so that you can focus on long-term outreach. And a huge part of that is your own financial health. So today I got to talk with Nick. He is a financial planner and can help you with a lot of different ways. I'll leave some more information about that in the show notes. But I really hope that you get encouraged and inspired by what he had to say. It was a really great talk, and I loved kind of connecting with him. So let's take a listen. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm here with Nick. Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Ken. Thanks, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm so happy to have you on here, and so we can talk about some financial stuff. So let's start with this. What do you think is one of the biggest mistakes that Christians make when it comes to whether it's owning a business or with their own personal finances?
Yeah. So, well, Ken, as a financial planner, I get to have a lot of these conversations with people. As a believer, I love incorporating. I think it's our duty as believers to create or to find a theology for everything we do, whether it's drinking water or exercise or the work that we do. It's important to align that with God's word for his glory, for the kingdom. And so I love having these conversations with people. And I find a lot of times people are either embarrassed. Usually money is a source of embarrassment if we don't have enough or make enough or don't feel like we're doing well enough with what we do have. I've talked to business owners that own multi-million-dollar businesses that are embarrassed to admit that they're not making as much as they think they should, right? They're not running their business as efficiently as they think that other people do, or somebody else would in their same shoes. So usually it's a source of embarrassment. Also, especially for believers, there's there's kind of like money is a taboo topic we don't really talk much about. It's a lot easier to talk about marriage and family and Bible verses, or just keeping the conversation light. And if you do go deep, it's maybe sharing more about a personal struggle or something you're praying through, or even asking for prayer for an anxiety around your work is easier than asking for help managing the money you're earning at work, right? So that's probably one of the, I'd say that's a great lead into what I see as a common mistake or common blind spot for people, is not having a clear plan for how to manage and use the money they have coming in. I call it a cash flow plan because the word budget usually brings like sweat or tears to people's eyes, or blood pressure increases. But basically a budget is just saying, okay, I'm gonna make $5,000 this month or $50,000 this month. What do I have to put that money towards first? Well, my home, food for my family, insurance for the car, like where is that money going? And then as it is being spent through the month, having that, your budgeting tool track that so you can see, okay, look, we've got $500 this week or this month for groceries. We've spent $300, we have $200 left. So how are we going to allocate the resources that we have in this, in this budget item or this whatever, just to make it to the end of the month? This sounds like a lot of work. It can be, but once you get in the rhythm of it, it's really just developing the discipline around, how you're using your money.
Wow, that's really good. And yeah, I feel like it is something that really isn't talked about. Like a lot of times in church services that I'm a part of, a lot of the discussion around money is just like when it comes to tithing and what that looks like. Why do you think that there's a lot of people that are so hesitant to talk about money, especially in the church?
Man, that's a great question. I mean, I think it's far too tied to status. We kind of size people up pretty quickly based on what you do and how much you make. We don't have classes, at least in our country, like other countries or cultures do around the world or have through history. So you don't really have the aristocracy in the same way that, mid 1800s England, for example, had, all these classes, and India has a caste system. So like when I meet you, I'm trying to size you up subconsciously to say like, okay, what does this guy do? How, educated is he? How wealthy is he? How much respect should I give him? Which is like exactly what James told us. Do not do that. Do not. And so I think it's very difficult for us to treat someone the same agnostic to what they do or how much they make. And so because we know that there's always somebody above us, we don't want to disclose where we're at. Or on the other side, we don't want to make other people uncomfortable by disclosing that we're way above maybe the median in our church family. And so we want to just be Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, right? We don't want to be celebritized, right? Or celebrified by establishing that. And so I think it's a tough topic. And I think that, I don't know, there's a lot of reasons. What do you think? I mean, why do you think it's such a difficult topic? I know you pastor a church.
Yeah, I think kind of like what you said, I think a lot of it is like money is tied to status. I feel like, especially when you're talking about pastors and their salary, there's always that confusion of like what is allowed, what is not allowed to talk about. So I think that there's that in there. And yeah, I don't know. I think people also are afraid to talk about it because it'll be like they're worried that things are going to be like not the way that they hope that they are. And if things are going bad, it's better to just like push it under the rug and not talk about it and just kind of let it fester there. And yeah, I think also just a lot of people are just, I think it's a lot of ignorance, I guess, would be probably the best way to say it. Like, people don't want to take the time to actually formulate a budget and do what they need to do in order to make sure that they have all of their ducks in a row, and they're just kind of hoping that everything works. So there's a lot of different reasons, but I think especially like, because honestly, like I know of several churches in our area, and I couldn't tell you even a ballpark number of what like people are making and how they're like what their income looks like, because people just don't talk about it.
It is interesting. I think there's a lot of shame tied to it as well. I mean, I've talked to missionaries overseas. I've talked to business owners here in my community. I've talked to people with millions of dollars, and it seems pretty consistent that, kind of like this in the parable of the talents, that one talent servant who was found unfaithful got a pretty harsh response, right? A pretty epically like life-ending response from the king. And I think that scares a lot of people out of talking about it into silence of, well, I'm going to be accountable to God, I guess. So I just will have to do the best I can and hope that, that my stewardship is good. And that's another thing. So we've tied the word stewardship mainly to just money, right? But stewardship is the management of all the resources God's given us. It's not just money. I mean, it wasn't even old money. It wasn't even just money in the Old Testament, but guys like Randy Alcorn and some other thinkers in the Christian finance space have given us the time, talent, treasure framework for thinking about resources that God's entrusted to us. I added two more if I could dare to add to the work of the greats. But time, talent, treasures are great. But I add kind of a subcategory under time of attention and relationships, because where we give our attention, and we're so distracted so often, but like where we give our attention and where we invest into relationships is a use of time. But I think it's a very important distinction, that it's not just, because time can be pretty ambiguous. We all have 20 anyway. So, but there's a lot of ways that we can steward what God's given us, and it's not just a conversation about money. I also think that a lot of people don't realize just how expensive it costs to live in a developed society. But simply the cost of fuel, insurance, air conditioning, groceries, rent, that alone is a very big number. When you add in school, medical care, any type of a hobby, clothes, like it gets very expensive very quickly to just have a relatively what we would call a middle-class lifestyle. And you can't really live in a suburb near a major city and not have a middle-class lifestyle. And so it can be very expensive to live, to just have your groceries and just have a house that's, insured. And anyway, so because there's just kind of an information gap there, I think people kind of feel embarrassed at how much they spend on just living. And so anyway, going back, that's again highlighting the importance of a good budget. But talk to me about this. I'm curious too, because like I see this a lot where people they want to give. They want to give. I think people, especially believers, we can be have very generous hearts, but they feel constrained by lack of financial clarity. How do you see that play out in your church?
Yeah, I definitely see that a lot, especially because of the community we live in. Like, I feel like there is a lack of clarity as far as like how much they can give versus like how much they need to pay bills. Because we're focused in the inner city of Cleveland, so like we have like there's a lot of like the median income. I think last time I checked was like under $20,000. So like we have a lot of government housing. We have a lot of people that are struggling in that way. So when people come to church, it's like they don't like, even talking about 10% sometimes is a little bit like hesitant, because you need those funds to pay the bills or to stay in the house that you're in, or to even make sure that you have enough groceries to get through the week. So I think that is a little bit of a challenge for us. But I think we always try to just say for everyone, like, we're about being generous, and not just like saying, oh yeah, we trust God and just blindly trust God in that way, but continuing to just like say, like, when we are generous, these are the fruits that we can see. Like when we're giving to the church and we're able to do outreaches as a result of it. And I think being a part of that, not just with your treasure, but also with your time. We see a lot of that, because I think one of the ways, aside from being just generous and like financially in our church, I see a lot of our people being more generous with their time and really taking the time to reach out to our community, whether it's with like an outreach, whether it's doing like long-term strategic community outreach, or like a one-time event. Like I've seen a lot with that. So I can say for ours, because our church is very unique in that way. But I think looking at other churches, like, because we've been to a lot of different churches, just kind of telling people what we do. And there's a lot of people that they're like, man, like, I really like what you do. But then when we give them that giving link, or we say, like, this is how you can give and get involved, I feel like people kind of clam up a little bit. Maybe part of that is like I want to be generous, but like, I'm afraid. I think number one, I'm afraid of like, my money's just going to go to nothing. And that's where we're usually really transparent about like sending out newsletters. And if there's a financial issue, like we tell people, but I think also people are afraid that like their giving will be, I guess, kind of expose them a little bit. Cause there are some people, like, they're very, they like to be very anonymous with it. And if it came out that like, oh, they give to this person, then they're worried that like 10 other organizations will try knocking on their doors, and they won't be able to afford that. So I think maybe that's part of it too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a lot of the listeners here are either in ministry or in nonprofit space, or considering going into it. And so you understand the importance of financial disclosures. You understand the importance of good financial reporting and complying with the requirements to maintain your nonprofit status. I encourage considering applying a similar level of scrutiny to your personal spending as well, not for the purpose of necessarily cutting. It depends, but seeking, again, giving attention to what Proverbs describes as the conditions of your flocks and herds, right? It says, pay attention and know well the condition of your assets, of your resources, know how they're doing. So give attention to your budget. I was talking with a guy yesterday. We're having, kind of an intro call, and we were talking a little bit about this exact thing. And he said, man, I was embarrassed to start diving into my credit card statements over the last couple months and realize, wait, I spent how much on coffee? Oh my gosh, like, I'm so embarrassed. But again, like, knowledge, like, facts are our friends. Knowledge is power in that sense. And so it's good to spend that time and give the attention to know where is the money going, rather than, in having that conversation with your spouse or with, your roommates, or, whoever's helping to contribute to those expenses, having that honest conversation with them and inviting them into it. Because once you identify, now you can take some form of action with it. I think a lot of, it's kind of going back to the conversation about Christians and giving. A lot of people, I think, are they're hardest to be generous, but unfortunately they have already mortgaged the next several months or years of their time and of their earning in the form of debt. Debt can be a very powerful tool both ways, right? It can help to build wealth. I highly recommend getting a mortgage if it is a reasonable decision for someone. That's a very contextualized decision-making process. And certainly people can, like, get into houses they can't afford and really do damage to their financial lives. But generally speaking, buying a house is a good thing. It is a good wealth building, wealth creating step for a lot of people. But most consumer debt is not mortgage debt. It's credit card debt. It's short-term loans. It's car loans. It's leftover medical debt. It's student loans. It's all those other things that we trade our future working years for the money today to do what we're trying to do, or what we want, or to buy what we want. And often that then inhibits our generosity, because you can't give to the church money you've already promised to the lender. You can't do that. And my pastor likes to say, like, if you give your rent money to the church, you'll be knocking on the church's door next week to pay rent.
That's good. Yeah. And that's a good point. I think also, like, sometimes just having that mindset of, like, because I've heard it this way before, like, if you really consider going out to eat and how it might cost you $50 for you and your spouse, and that $50, how many hours are you going to be working to pay that off, and seeing if the cost is there? Now, I'm not saying never go out to eat, but just, like, I think making sure, like how the Bible says, like, counting the costs and making sure that you're at least, like, tracking what's going on. I feel like that's really where a lot of people trip up, is, like, the tracking. And then like, when it comes to giving, I think also part of it might be the not doing it first. And then you're looking at the end of your month and you're like, well, I don't really have much to give. And then it kind of just ends there.
Yeah. So I'll add two thoughts to that real quick, if I can. The first is this is only to make matters worse, but on the $50 to eat, and you calculate how many hours, let's say, just for easy math, you make $25 an hour, and you go out for a $50 meal. Well, you'd think, well, that's 2 hours. You'd be slightly wrong, because the $25 you make per hour is gross, pre-tax.
True.
After you pay taxes in state and federal, if you're in a state that charges income tax and payroll tax, well, now maybe you're down to like $18 an hour. Well, that $18 an hour, now it's like closer to 3 hours of your time for that $50 meal. So that only makes matters worse. Sorry to add bad news to bad news. But on the other side, though, about not doing it first. So I highly recommend a couple changes in framework when thinking about, okay, well, what do I do? How do I get a healthier framework for my money? One of them is the 70-20-10 rule. So 70 is your new 100%. Okay, so if you make $100, no, you made $70. If you made $10,000, no, you made $7,000. $7,000 is your number to live on. 70% of your income, you're going to live on 70%. 20% is going to go to savings. Okay, because you've got to pay yourself, and I'll say more about that in a minute. Then 10% is giving right off the top. So Ken, if you make $100. If you make $100, we're going to put $70 in your checking account for your living expenses, 20 in your savings account to invest for your future, for your retirement, for upcoming needs, and then 10% is going back to the Lord as a gratitude, as a, like, hey, none of this is mine, because here's that's the bottom line, really, is like, of that whole 70, 20, and 10, of the whole 100, none of it's ours anyway, right? Like it's all his. He's entrusting it to our stewardship, our management, and to provide for our needs and to have something to give to others, right? Paul outlines that really beautifully. I can't remember the reference offhand, but anyway, let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor. I think it's in one of the Thessalonians. Where is that? Do you remember?
I think so, yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot, but let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, working with his own hands so that he may have and have to give to those in need. So there's 4 different stages of that process in that verse. Right now he's stealing. He's a thief. He's taking what is not his and he's not working for it. Instead, he should labor. He should labor with his own hands. So now he is productive in society, doing something good, and he is laboring to create value and earn income in exchange for it, so that he may have, because he has needs. He will be hungry. He will want, new shoes when his shoes wear out, and he wants to, whatever. Like, you have needs, so you have to have in order to provide for your needs, and then so that he may give, because ultimately we are conduits of blessing that God gives us for the sake of others. I mean, a lot of times God will bless us with things that are never intended to stop with us. And so that's a beautiful process, right? The 4 stages there that Paul outlines. But yeah, so 70, 20, 10, that's a really helpful tool because, again, none of it's ours anyway. And so, what would God have us to do with these resources?
That's really true. And I think kind of like what you had said at the beginning, that it's important to live below your means anyway. And I feel like sometimes, like, when you just say that, yeah, like, this isn't mine, it's God's, and then I'm taking that 10% as just a way of saying, like, thank you for what you've given me, and I'm going to steward the rest of this the way that I can. I think that's just a really good thing to kind of keep in mind. And also the 20% like savings, that's so important, because it's very easy to be like, I got to pay everybody else first, but you got to pay yourself first. Because otherwise you'll just continue to stay like on the cycle of whether it's debt, whether it's like not being able to pay your bills or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah. And 20% is a pretty aggressive savings rate. And if that's too difficult, try 5, start with 5 and then slowly work it up to 10, then, slowly to 15. I usually recommend starting with, 98-1-1. So 98% and then 1%, because everybody can live on 98% of what they make. If you can't, then something else is desperately wrong. But 98-1-1, and then every month change it, right? Increase it from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 or 2 to 4. And so slowly you work in carving off a little bit of your money every month and going. So it's a slow adjustment. And then after about 18 months or 12 to 18 months, you'll be at that 70-20-10 framework. Much, much healthier, much better set up for your future, and giving, right? And being generous and active in what the Lord's doing.
Oh, that's really good. I like the gradual too, because like, I feel like sometimes people are like, they're like, oh my gosh, everything is wrong. And they feel like they have to change it like all today. But really it's the small steps that you can take that will help guide you over time that can really make that lifelong change like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's the path to change. That's the way that habits are formed, and that's the way that God is gracious and patient in changing us, right? Making us more like Christ is just gradual, gentle, slow. I have a podcast called 1 Degree, and it's all thoughts and topics around the idea of consistent, minor changes over time, right? Because that's where life change really happens.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit before we wrap up about some retirement things. What is your theology when it comes to retirement?
Yeah, so I actually have a blog post I've written about this, because Ken, let me just set it up for you this way. Like, talking to Christians about retirement, I've found 2 very strong responses. The first is, well, I don't know if I'm going to retire. I don't know if I want to retire. I like working. I don't know if God has really told us to retire. You can't find retirement in the Bible. There's all these reasons we kind of like create for it. And, oh, by the way, there's that story of the guy that Jesus told in Matthew where he had a great year and he was like, build bigger barns, store it all for later. And that night he dies and God says, you fool, this night your soul is required of you. And who will take all that you have made? What is to come of it? Was God's question to him. And so therefore, yeah, I ain't saving for retirement, Ken, because clearly Jesus does not like retirement savings. Okay. That's one camp. The other camp is the very traditional financial planning. Like, that's right, I'm going to retire. In fact, I want to retire not at 65, but at 45. And how can we do it? And how can I get this done as fast as possible? I think both of these approaches really miss the point. So I propose a nice third option, which is go to the ant, consider its ways. The ant is a really fascinating little creature. In times of harvest, in summer, it stores up food, kind of like squirrels store up nuts for the winter. So it works extra hard in the summer because guess what? In the winter, you can't find acorns. You can't find grain or whatever it is that the ant is trying to eat. It's not in harvest anymore. So by storing up in the time of plenty for the time of need, the ant, the squirrel, the animals prepare for what's coming. Joseph, our famous Bible hero from Genesis, God gave him the interpretations of Pharaoh's dreams of the skinny cows, right? And the coming famine years that would follow 7 years of bountiful harvest and plenty. And so Pharaoh, terrified, is like, Joseph, what should we do? And he said, we're going to save. Interestingly enough, it was 20%, actually, if I remember right, the savings rate of the harvest during the years of plenty. But they saved up in years of plenty for the coming years of famine. These examples undergird for me what I see in kind of the life timeline of what it looks like to live in 2025 and relative modernity in developed nations. We have, let's say you live to 100. All right. Well, you're 0 to 20, you're being provided for by somebody else, right? Your parents, caretakers. Around age 20 is probably when your career is really starting. It's probably when you're getting your first grown-up job. You're probably going to work for 30 to 50 years, right? Somewhere up to age 50, 60, 70. That's probably when you will, be approaching the sunset of your working career. But your lifespan will probably continue for 10, 20, 30 years past your retirement, sometimes longer. I mean, there's stories of people retired early, lived really long. They had 50 years of life after they, quote unquote, retired. Well, knowing that you are economically valuable and viable at age 30 and 40 in ways you will not be at ages 80 and 90, you can look ahead and say, well, there's years of leanness coming. There are years of need coming. I need to be diligent in the years of plenty to save for those years so that whether or not Christ comes, whether or not my family grows up and takes care of me, whether or not my health fails me or my work continues or I love work till the day I die, I'm at least preparing for what the normal human experience is between ages 65 and 95, which is some type of a health crisis in your late retirement, usually some lifestyle that you didn't have, like playing with your kids and traveling with your spouse and all that kind of stuff, and grandkids and whatnot. And then, you probably have a paid off house at that point. Hopefully your living expenses have gone down. But the point being, you're not going to be working. You're not going to be waking up at age 82 and going to the grocery store to bag groceries or going to the office to take phone calls or going to the car dealership to sell cars. That's not going to be happening at age 82 for the most part. And you'll probably still have several more years to live. So knowing that your working years are the harvest season, the summer of your life, we should be wise and be careful to save. Now, how much should we save, Ken? Well, probably not $50 million. Okay. There's a line at which you will have, there's just way more than you will ever need. Okay. Above, and that's a very, very high line. Let's bring that down a little to the normal, reasonable lifestyle needs. Everything above that, you don't need. You can give away. God's giving you more than you need. Congratulations. how does he want you to use it, right? What kingdom purposes does he have outside of care for you and your family and your spouse that you can now leverage that money into? And to get to that number, I'm kind of simplifying a big retirement calculation here. Basically, to get to this number of how much do I need to care for my wife and my family or my spouse, there's a slow, gradual savings path, right? If you save $1,000 a month for 30 years, you'll have probably a couple $1 million, assuming a healthy savings rate. That's a number we back into in doing kind of your wealth finish line, your financial finish line. And once whether you're below that line or above it, at least okay, how much do I need to be saving, and how much can I then give away?
That's good. And yeah, I like that you don't have a specific number, but just because everyone, depending on where you live, depending on what expenses you actually have, it's always going to be different. And I think it's important to at least plan, because I feel like the biggest thing is, even if you don't need the plan, at least you have it in place just in case you did.
Sure.
And so as we're wrapping up, I never asked you what really got you into financial planning. What drives that passion for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. The long story short is both my dad, but also, I don't know, God kind of pushed me into this. It wasn't exactly what I planned on doing. I watched my dad start 2 businesses, and when he sold the second one, he got really lucky. He got what a lot of business owners don't get, which is basically he did get enough money to have a decent retirement. A lot of business owners don't get that. And he, like many business owners, really wasn't that disciplined about saving for a retirement in his earning years. And so I watched him work really hard and never feel like he had a plan. Never really seemed to know what's the strategy? What are we aiming toward here? And then I watched a financial planner come in with a tax suggestion, a tax strategy for a small business owner in the form of a retirement plan that was able to save my dad tens of thousands of dollars in taxes during some of the most profitable years of his business, and do it in a way that gave money to the employees, that saved for his future, and did all of that instead of paying the IRS. And I am a big fan of that. So I saw the power, but then also, stewardship is very important to me. It's not overstating it to say that helping Christians to get clarity and confidence that they are honoring God with their wealth is a passion of mine, because I think there's so much confusion around that. And if I can just help some people to get the peace of mind and the clarity of being able to confidently say, yes, I now know, I feel like I know now know better what God wants me to do with my money, and I'm doing it. I'm actually following the strategy and following the plan. And I feel like I feel his pleasure in how I'm now stewarding my financial life. I have a passion for that. I love to do that.
That's awesome. And honestly, I can hear it in your voice when you're talking about not just talking about wealth in general, but talking about how it connects to scripture, and how as Christians, we can take that next step to say, this is what we need to do, not just to further the kingdom of God, but to make sure that we're doing the most with what God has given us in this time. So that's really awesome. So if someone wanted to get in contact with you, how would they do so?
Yeah. Well, thank you for your kind words, Ken. I appreciate that a lot. I'm glad it comes through, because it's how I feel. So, money is an indication of our souls. It's a really great window into the state of our hearts. And so, anyway, there's a lot we can learn from scripture has so much to say about money. It's overwhelming. I feel like I'm still, just at the very beginnings of learning some of these things. But yeah, if somebody wants to connect with me, and I love meeting listeners to podcasts, and just I love meeting people in general. But my company is called Open Handed Wealth. So you can find me at openhandedwealth.com. You can find me on Instagram or YouTube, Nick Garofalo. And, from there you can reach out and connect with me, or check out some blogs or videos. I've got some free gifts for you listeners, actually, if they want to check out openhandedwealth.com/freebies. I've got a few free resources around the topics we've been talking about today for anyone who's listening.
Awesome. So yeah, I'll make sure I include that in the show notes, and yeah, definitely reach out. I think even if you are like, well, I think I'm pretty good financially, it's just good to just double check, especially because you don't want to be 20, 30 years down the road and realize that you are a lot further behind than you were hoping to be. So thank you, Nick, so much for all that you do, and thank you for coming on today.
Oh, Ken, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for what you're doing. You're doing great work, and it's an honor to be on the show with you. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that talk. I think one of the biggest things I take away from it, which I feel like kind of happens a lot with me, is the idea of intentionality. You just have to be intentional about stuff. Sometimes taking the scary step of knowing what's going on, even if it's bad, can help you. So stay funded, stay focused. We'll talk to you guys next time. Like and subscribe, and I hope you guys enjoy these different types of formats. We're just trying new things here. So God bless you guys. Talk to you soon.